saying just walk out. This basically is coming back to the messaging. They want to say it's so easy to walk in, it's so easy to walk out, and some of that is true. Once you go in, you pick things. I spent about a half hour trying to confuse the store. I was successful eventually, but the store does work pretty good in terms of taking things off, putting them, and then simply walking out with them and such. The ceiling is completely covered in electronics. My average there is about, for every square meter, it costs about 50,000 US in terms of electronics and such. So it's a very expensive concept. There's two ways to look at this. One being it's really interesting. Second, it is very expensive, thus it doesn't make any money. Again, back to the same question, which is it's a very effective marketing vehicle, but it's not retail. The most important thing I can say when we look at these stores, and you can see product. Now, one of the things that's a lot of product from Whole Foods is starting to come into these stores as they start expanding those out. You can see how they have a very eclectic grouping of products in terms of how they bring it in. They bring in one load in the morning, and then whatever's left over, that's all. So all these signs here are on push, and they all say, basically, so good, it's gone. They don't replenish as things run out. So it's every single day they replenish it, and that's it. That's how they control the labors and such. They do a lot of meal kits. I cannot get a feeling for if the meal kits sell well or not. It's only been 2 weeks in the store, and the other store I've been in, it doesn't look. The meal kits are very fancy. They're all intended to take home, be dinner substitutes, that type of thing. Those are all made on premise. A couple other looks in terms of how the store looks. It's a very attractive store. There's no issues about it and such. Some issues that do come up with the store legally. One is cash. So the only way you can go into the store is if you have a credit card, okay? That means that 30 to 40% of the United States population cannot shop in this store. That gets people upset in terms of legal questions about access and such. The second problem that you have is that the store is very exposed. The number one cause of loss in the United States for retail is organized crime. So if this store was open to the street, it would very likely have a very significant shrink type factor that would have to be dealt with. So there's some issues. The number one issue I have with Amazon stores is no other retailer in the United States has duplicated them. Now, let me explain a little bit. In the United States, just like in Chile, if a retailer comes up with a neat idea, everybody copies it immediately. They copy it because they want to see if it works, how it makes money. Nobody's duplicating this, okay? Nobody wants to lose money. So Amazon uses these as a means of marketing to their online store. It's not a means for them to make money, and that's probably the most important thing. That said, it does influence other retailers in terms of giving them ideas about how to place things and such. So looking at Alibaba and Tencent, Alibaba is about 4 times bigger than Amazon by volume and gross GMV. So they have a different way. The overall ecosystem for both Alibaba and Tencent essentially expands everything. So they want to control all the different space that's in here. And part of this to remember is that when they started opening up in China, there was no logistics network. There was no finance network. There was nothing there. They essentially built everything online to purpose-built into a brand new market with a lot of money coming into it. Interesting side is they did this online. Now they're backing up and starting to build stores because there's not very many formal stores in China. So you're seeing them actually move backwards from the way you're used to seeing. So it's a very different type of approach. The biggest strength they have is really in finance and payment. Payment, they have between these two companies close to 2 billion different holders in terms of payment options. Finance, they hold about 50% of all mortgages in China. So it's a very powerful company as a bank, but then they get also into the retail side at the same time. Some of the other sides of this is every one of their retail hosts has internal to it some form of banking that automatically pops up. Again, 80% of all 80% of all integration with internet in China is done through mobile devices. So when you open a mobile device and you buy something, you immediately start getting offers in terms of banking, loans, direct one-to-one types of correspondence and such. Again, they continue to, Alibaba's been moving backwards into stores. So they've been, basically they've taken, it's one of the things that was shown earlier in that is when you see the numbers from Amazon, every single year, every Christmas they go up by about 40%, then afterwards they go down by 20%. So Christmas is their time when they pick up people. Singles Day is when they pick up money here in terms of Alibaba. They figure they pick up about 25% more permanent customers every time they go through Singles Day. Singles Day is a holiday. It was a make-believe holiday made up by the government about 20 years ago. It took off, and it's been very successful ever since. It's the 11th of November, for those of you keeping track. They own about 40 malls now. They own approximately 250 supermarkets. All of them are highly digital, they're highly integrated, they all are involved with in terms of ways of connecting online versus in-store, and back and forth. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. So, so I want you to picture the entire building is interactive. The entire building is touch. If you go up to the building and touch it, it will respond to you. Okay? Your phone will start talking to the building. Your phone will talk to the building and also to each of the shops inside the store, or inside the mall. So it's all highly integrated and highly engaged in terms of how it works. Their new supermarket is Hema. They've been opening about 100 of these per year at the moment. They're up to about 200, 250 at the last time I checked. Very much oriented towards the middle-class Chinese market. Again, a lot of digital, a lot of integration to the online. Anything you order in the store, you can have delivered to your home immediately. They have just a range of different services associated to it. If you want to take delivery of product from Alibaba into the store, you can do that as well. So it's a complex type of environment that's emerging out of this. The other format that you're seeing more and more is kiosks. So these are very small stores. They're about 50 square meters. You identify yourself to come in. You can go in. You can get snack items. They're very much basically convenience stores, that type of thing. These work pretty good in China for a variety of reasons. Probably the number one reason is most neighborhoods in China are very safe. Most neighborhood home ownership in China is at 90–95%. For a variety of reasons. So neighborhoods tend to be very secure. The other thing is you probably know from the news that the Chinese love video cameras. The government loves watching people. This has issues, but one of them is it's very safe. So when you put one of these stores into a public area, they tend not to get damaged. They tend not to be robbed from and such, and they work pretty well. The difficulty you have here in terms of this and taking this concept to Chile is this one right here, which is to get into the store, you have to identify yourself at the door. You go in, you're now in a 1 meter cube. You have to wait for the cube to identify you before it lets you in, and you're trapped in the store, basically. So the other side of this is when we're looking at unstaffed stores, all of the unstaffed stores in the world are either in China, Singapore, Taiwan, or Korea. There's a couple in the United States. The concept works very well in Asia. It has not taken off in the rest of the world at all. So as a concept, it's interesting where it's going and how it's going to work. And again, this is very much influenced by the idea of having financial technology extended by the Amazon concept of one click and bringing it into the store. So very similar. So last one being basically, I'll look at what's the changes in terms of click and mortar. Click and mortar is a pretty good way of talking brick and mortar in terms of how things are changing. So One of the big issues that you're seeing is a lot of companies are starting to use third-party services like Instacart. Instacart comes in, it does the shopping for you, it brings it home. The difficulty for a lot of retailers is they do a very good job of branding. So you're shopping with Instacart, you're not shopping with Kroger. You're not shopping with Target. So you get into branding conflicts. And that's been Instacart's biggest problem, is how do they bring their branding down so that they fit? And that's kind of one of the things. So it's a quick solution to going to a omni-channel solution. The other side of this is you start seeing some of the other ways that they pop in. Target's doing direct ships in there, and then you see some of the other players wandering in terms of enabling and such. Other sides of this, you start seeing more and more click and collect in terms of grocery. Click and collect really started off in France for reasons that didn't have much to do with business. It had, well, let me rephrase. In France, you cannot keep a store open past 6 or 7 o'clock. Most people want to buy groceries after 7. So they opened up these click and collect stores. Basically, the government didn't realize they were retailers, so they didn't limit their hours or the amount of money they can make from it. It took 2 years for them to catch up. Now the French are used to buying from this type of work. In the United States, we have approximately 15, it's close to 20,000 stores now that are click and collect, pickup type stores. It's not a new model, and it seems to work, and it basically seems to work best in the Midwest part of the United States with their tradition. In the East and the West part, not quite as well. This is a new store that came out through Petco. Petco, which is a pet store chain, has now come out with Pet Coach, which is a veterinarian high-end store. But what makes it interesting is it is a cashierless store. So you basically check yourself out. There's a video processing for ratification that you're going in and out of the store. They find that this type of format seems to make people much more honest. It's also a format that, by the way it's laid out, it's intended for people bringing pets into it. Americans will bring their pets onto airplanes, into stores, almost any place. So this store actually works pretty well from that perspective. One of the other things you're starting to see more and more is digital showing up into the aisle. This is a company called AWM. They put digital molding onto the shelves, so it gives messaging. It gets involved in terms of that, but also tracks inventory. Again, it's starting to get into some more digital solutions that you're used to seeing from Amazon. This is a little bit more practical in terms of how, probably the most important thing for most retailers in the US and Canada is that this can be retrofitted. So you can have existing shelving, put this on and back, track the product underneath. You can actually bring it into old stores and bring it into new. Other company, Uglo, which is from Japan, has made their stores much more interactive, basically in response to Amazon in Japan. They sell a lot of what's called technical clothing. The technical clothing is a new terminology that refers to nanotechnology in clothes, so like clothes that absorb your sweat, clothes that repel mosquitoes. That's technical clothing. In the process, they use a lot of digital, a lot of technology, a lot of explanation in store in terms of how the clothing works, why you're paying for it and such. So it's very interactive types of stores. This is A.S. Watson, and this store is in Hong Kong. They have 2 or 3 of them in Singapore and such. And again, this is a department store where the entire department store is interactive with itself. It's kind of like going into a large website. Every place you're in the store realizes where you are. It's talking to you, it's interacting with you and such. It's just a very different approach that you're starting to see breaking out more and more in the Asian market. This is Sport Check in Canada. They have over 200 different digital screens, different interactions, 3D panels and such. What we're seeing more and more is, as you see this type of store competing with the online players, especially in sports, they're making the stores much more interactive. If you've been in a Nike or Adidas store, you've seen this type of thing. This company just takes it much further in terms of how it's working. A couple other sides of this. And again, just about everybody now has the locker systems that you're seeing. That's Walmart's over there on the right-hand side. You're seeing other ones starting to merge. In terms of that, you're starting to see Stores that do not have an online locker are starting to bring Amazon into their stores, so they're starting to create a kind of complex solution and such. In Chile, you've seen a lot of click and collect. You see a lot of lunker. In the 2 days that I've been wandering around stores, I only found one where anybody was waiting. So I'm not sure how successful this is or not, but it's obvious that it's starting to penetrate into this market as well. Home Depot actually tries to organize its supply chain so it can optimize when people are coming into the store, when they're ordering online, how they're going to get the product delivered. Again, it's very much an Amazon system for delivery, but it's inside the home improvement business. This is Kroger, which is about $120 billion US, and covers about 2/3 of the United States in terms of coverage.